This is the Cloud Security Today podcast, where leaders learn how to get cloud security done. And now your host, Matt Chiodi.
Today, I'm joined by Christina Murillo. Christina is the Senior Director of Information Security with the New York Football Giants. That is an NFL team, in case you don't watch football. Christina's career does not fit the standard cybersecurity template. She came up through identity, cloud, and enterprise security. She spent nearly 4 years working at Microsoft, focusing specifically on identity and information protection. She also co-authored Zero Trust Networks, second edition, and then took on a very different challenge, building the Giants' first dedicated cybersecurity function from scratch. What I really appreciated about this conversation is that it cuts through a lot of the romanticized version of sports in cybersecurity. Everyone assumes that the crown jewel is the playbook. Christina makes the case that the real risk is much more nuanced. It's understanding how the business actually operates, building trust in a function that the organization didn't originally ask for, and protecting two very different worlds inside one franchise: football operations and business operations. We also get into why the clubs compete fiercely on the field, but collaborate on cyber, and what other industries could learn from that model, and how Christina's work with women of color in tech shaped the way that she thinks about credibility, representation, and showing up as the expert in the rooms where people may not always expect it. This is a conversation about security as a business discipline, not just a technical function, and about what it really takes to build a program where the stakes are high, the culture is unique, and the playbook is not the whole story. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Christina, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, this is going to be exciting. So you've got a really cool background, right? You've worked for Microsoft, you've gone deep into identity and cloud, co-authored books on Zero Trust, and now you are working for the NFL Giants football club, which is really cool. Again,
Yeah.
my family, big Giants fan, so this is extra special. Tell me, what was the path that took you from Harlem and enterprise tech to securing the NFL franchise? What was that journey like?
That's a great question. And honestly, there wasn't a playbook, right? It was just me kind of following my gut and curiosity. So there was really no path. I think for me, I started in a traditional IT world. So I've been in the industry almost 30 years now, and I started first level one, right, help desk, and kind of navigated my my way through that, and just continued to learn as much as possible. And for some reason, I ended up here, right? Well, backtrack. I started working for different companies within New York City, like the financial sector. And then I had an opportunity to go to Microsoft because I was super curious about the cloud at the time. The cloud was like this new thing, right?
I remember.
And so, yeah, you remember. And so I was like, well, what is it? I have no idea. And I got the opportunity to work at Microsoft, focusing on identity in the cloud and data, DSPM pretty much. And I was like, okay, this whole new world. So it forced me to learn. And I just took that experience and ran with it, right? And then I ended up here. And this wasn't a strategic move for me. It was just, a recruiter called me and was like, hey, we have this opportunity. You would be building the security program. You would effectively be the CISO. And so I was like, okay, who's the company? And he's like, well, I'm not going to tell you yet. And I was like, okay, no problem. And then finally, when it was time to come on site for my second interview, before my first interview, I was told the company, and I was like, okay, cool. I don't like football, so as long as the job works.
I thought they would disqualify you as soon as you said that.
No, actually, that was one of my interview questions, my panel interview questions. It was like, do you watch football? I was like, no, I don't watch football. I don't know anything about football. So I think it actually helped. It helped because they didn't necessarily want an avid football fan, right? Because then you would be distracted and not focus on the mission and the work. And I was just like, I have no idea. I like it a little bit more now, obviously, because I know more. But at first, I was like, I don't even, is that yellow line real? Is it fake? I don't know, But you have to learn, so.
Well, kudos to the Giants football club for not making that a gating requirement. So
Yeah,
I
they
love
were
that.
smart. They were smart.
I know that every time I've taken a new role, I've gone in with like some assumptions, right? Like, oh, it's going to be this way. And then within the first, 30, 90 days,
Yeah.
it's usually demolished. Like,
Yes.
talk about something like, what did you believe about securing an NFL team before you got there that turned out to be like absolutely wrong?
I think one of the things that there were a couple, but one of the primary things was the hierarchy of like how the NFL works, like how a club works versus the NFL and vice versa. I didn't understand like that structure, right? I always thought like, okay, well the NFL sits at the top of the food chain and all the clubs kind of follow suit. And that's not really how it is. When you really look at it, the NFL is the front door, but all of the clubs, all of the teams, owners own the NFL, right? So it's more of a collaboration. It's not a like, well, they tell you what to do and you have to do it. It's more of a no. It's all of us like working together to kind of protect the entire league. It's not really a top-down approach. That was my one. I was like, oh, mind blown. This is what? This is not how it works, right? That was the first assumption that I just had to like throw out the window. And then there are other things like what I thought was important or considered crown jewels versus not. That was a big one for me because I assumed I'm like, oh, the traditional, what everybody thinks, right? But it's not that, and there's like so much more happening in the background. So that was like really interesting, and then just how the organization works, right? It's the organization's been around since 1925, and so it's very traditional. It's very football first, right, and fan first, and so that was new to me coming from like corporate systems and understanding that type of like infrastructure from like a people and even technology perspective. And this was like, no, this is something different. So it's almost like my experience is helpful, but I still had to learn this from scratch, this environment, like the sports world, because it is like an entirely different world. So
Yeah.
on earth. So that was very interesting as well.
Well, I want to go back to one thing you just said, because I think people are probably curious about it that are hearing this, right? So you said that everyone assumes the playbook is the crown jewel, but it's actually not. Like, you can address that however you want. I know there's some intellectual property there too, probably around that. So dance around that however you want.
Yeah.
But like, I guess the bigger question is like, what does that reveal about how security people often misunderstand business risk?
Yeah, I think that it's not the playbook. I think everybody thinks it's the playbook. There's other, data that is way more important. It's important. The playbook is important, but it's not as important as people think it is. And it's usually the same plays, right? So coaches come from different teams, same plays. It's just in a book. So take that any way you want to take it. But I think one of the things is that we assume what's important versus not important, which is mistake number one, right? I think in our review, we think, oh, these systems, these details are super critical. But from a risk perspective, the business may not think so, right? And you discover this as you start learning the business, learning the environment, learning the people and what's important to each person, to each department, and then to the entire organization. And it can be different. There may not be one thing that's like the critical thing. There may be multiple things that are important and are just kind of like prioritized, or you kind of have to put them in separate buckets or levels, if you will. So that's one thing I think that we do across the board, whether it's sports or finance. I think we make a lot of assumptions coming in instead of first understanding what the business is, how do we make money, what is it that we do, what is what does our day-to-day look like, what are all the moving parts, and then determining at that point what is really critical. Not because you assume, but because of what you have learned and what you are hearing from the people that are in the thick of it.
Were there, I think when you take a new role, there's always there's always this learning process, the discovery process. I'm curious, what was that discovery process like for you? Like, were there like breadcrumbs that led you to, kind of say, oh, it's not, I mean, yeah, the playbook's important, but it's not like the thing. Like, were there things that you look for around that?
Yeah. So it's funny because I started and I already had my ideas and I created like this 30, 60, 90 plan, right? And then I converted that into like a roadmap after my first 30 days. But something happens within my first 90 days. And that was, we needed to, I think it was like a risk assessment, and there was another business continuity assessment. And we had a third-party vendor that was already on the books before I joined. So we had a third-party vendor come on site. And based on that assessment, like I was able to sit in meetings with everybody in the organization, right? Nice. In terms like senior leaders and people, department heads and managers. And those meetings like catapulted me to the other side of the planet, because I was able to, as a newbie, I don't know anything, right? So I didn't even know what to ask. This vendor had done this before, but there wasn't someone like me in the room, right? So I was able to kind of work with them prior to them coming and to understand like, what are the questions you're asking? And here's what I would like to know. So they were able to ask these questions with me sitting in the room, and I was able to get a better understanding of what is it that you do? What are the critical systems that you're using? If something were to go down, how long could you, how long could you survive? How long could the business survive with this system or this critical piece component being down? And that gave me so much insight, so much so that from that level of detail, I was able to write our incident response plan from scratch. And I was able to also write a business continuity plan. And then I was able to speak to, okay, now I understand how things are working, right? And what's important versus what's not important to my senior leadership. So those two things, I think people take that for granted, but in a new organization, if you have the opportunity to form some kind of like assessment, whether that's you doing it internally or having a third-party vendor that you work with to do that, that does this, I would say that that's like the cheat code. It was a cheat code for me.
It's a great way to get your feet wet and kind of, as a new person. I think you also mentioned too in our pre-show interview, we were chatting, that you said that when you joined, like this was a brand new role that was required by the NFL. So it wasn't like there was all this institutional like history and all that. This was a net new role. So this sounded like a great way for you to just be like, hey, I didn't even order this thing, right? This thing just like, this was part of it, and it was a great learning process for you.
Exactly. It was definitely a great learning process. I mean, I think that allowed me to like look at the roadmap and say, oh no, this is wrong. This is not what we need to do. Because again, I was assuming things that were important, right? From like looking at our IT security and some of those components, like our cloud security. I was like, okay, we need to button things up. And those things were super important, but there were other things that were a little bit more critical that also opened the door for me to do more down the road. So I'm glad it happened within my first 30, 60 days versus a year out, because it saved me from making that mistake of assuming that, things that I thought were important. And then running in that direction, I was able to like reset very quickly and run in the correct direction, which was amazing, right? Amazing for me, at least. It worked out well. So I highly recommend that approach.
So this position, again, it was a brand new role required by the NFL.
It was a brand new role required by the NFL. So what happened was a couple of years ago, and this is public knowledge, one of the clubs, I won't call them out, got ransomed, right? And so because of that, there was a concerted effort across the league to, kind of raise up security, right? And look at every team's security posture and improve the security posture. Not that it was bad, but we knew that there could be some, bells and whistles. We could tune some things, right? So that's where a lot of these roles came. My role specifically, the Giants did not have an IT security or information security officer or person at all. And so that's what I came here to do. And then other teams were the same. They had some people that were already doing a similar role internally, so they shifted into the role. And then there were some people that were brought in from the outside, net new, to kind of focus on this function. So this is like my sole focus. And, working very closely with IT, working very closely with the other clubs as well, with other teams. We're like a little community, so we all know each other. We're not competitive in that regard. Like, we're competitive on the field, but we are not competitive in the back end, and the NFL as well, right? So we work with them closely as well. And then to basically translate like some of the NFL's requirements in terms of like improving our security posture into like tactical, actionable things. And because I'm the first security hire, I'm also very tactical. So I actually get hands-on to kind of like get it going, which has been fun, exhausting, but fun. Being strategic and tactical has been very interesting. But yeah, it was a net new. I've been here almost 3 years now. So we've come a long way. Yeah.
Let me ask this. So a lot of times I've been in roles where, it was created because there was some requirement, either some kind of compliance mandate that was driving it. And sometimes you don't get the best reception from the business because it's like, I didn't ask for you and you're here, right? So I'm just going to do it. Like, tell me, like, for the leaders that are listening that are, either are in similar positions or maybe there is some kind of new requirement that's driving a role. Like, what are some ways that you kind of built trust with the business, especially given that they didn't organically ask for the function in the first place?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, it is tough, and it was tough for me initially because it was like, well, we've always done things this way and it's worked. Why, So
we've always done things. You gotta love that.
Yes, we've always done things. So for me, it was, it was. I had to do a lot of listening, and I will say that it depends on the organization, right? It depends on the people. It depends on the culture. It depends on so many things. But what I did specifically is that I came in trying to understand what they thought was important. The people that hired me, like the senior leadership, what is important to you? Like, when you think of cybersecurity or information security, what is important to you? And initially it was like, well, we need these things, right? We need these documents. We need these plans. We don't know where to start. For me, that was not necessarily like critical. I'm like, I need to lock things up, right? But I didn't say that. I was like, no, that makes sense. That's important. So basically what I'm trying to say is that, like, at Microsoft, we used to call it listening at scale. So that's like listening, not to respond, but actually listening. Because if you listen and don't make any judgments, you will hear what they're trying to say. And the minute you showcase that, like, no, I listened to you, we got this done. That's very important. Even though you're one person and maybe you're the one doing the heavy lifting, it's not a I thing, it's a we thing, right? So bringing people along for the ride, actually understanding what they feel is important, and never making anyone feel that, like, well, I'm the expert, I know more about this topic than you do. Like, never. It's more like, no, I'm here to collaborate. What do you think is important? Here's my perspective on it. What is your perspective from a risk perspective, right? What is your perspective from a legal perspective? Like, how do we look at this as an organization? And that worked for me, right? Because I think that's one of the hardest things to build trust. But the most important thing is, once I listened and once I asked these questions and got responses, I was able to execute. And that was the third most important, I guess, I don't want to say skill, but that was the number, and I'm going to say that as number 2. Listen and then execute. When you execute, you can't it can't be fluff, right? You got to like show and prove. You got to show that you are, yes, I'm listening, but I'm also doing that thing. And I'm thinking about it a little bit. I'm taking a step further, right? So going a little bit more above and beyond. Don't wait for someone to say, can you write this? Can you document this? Can you whatever? Once you understand, then take that and run with it. And that's what I did. So those 3 things that's how I was able to build trust. Understanding that, like, I'm not here to judge, I'm here to to help, and I'm here to execute and improve the posture of the organization's security posture, right? That's what I'm here for. So there are give and takes when it comes to that, but it takes time, right? I think I was only able to build trust over time because I brought results, right? Whereas other people maybe a lot of talking, a lot of meetings, but then there's nothing to show for it. It's like, okay, well, you've been here 6 months. What have you done, right? So I kind of hit the ground running, and I think that showed that like, oh, we've accomplished so much, right? And we've done this so much so that like after my first year, I got promoted because, like I said, you have to execute and you have to show, but it's not well, I did this. It was like, no, look what we've done, collectively. So we have like a committee, an information security committee, and so that's part of that collective.
Okay.
And so while I'm the one like running, I need support from the committee. I need like that buy-in, funding, etc. So I always make it as when I speak about the things that we are doing, I speak in we and not I, and that helped a lot. But again, depends on the people, depends on the culture, depends on the organization. So a lot of depends.
It sounds like there's 3 things at least that were successful for you. Again, going back, the original question was, this was not a role that they necessarily asked for. It was something that was mandated by the business.
Yep.
But it sounds like you did 3 things. One was listen with empathy, right?
Yep.
Second thing was, when you're discussing it, using a lot of collaborative language as well, so they can see themselves in the situation. And the third was, go figure, delivering results, right? Not just being another talking head and delivering on the results that ultimately the business, I guess, had asked you to deliver on, right?
Yep.
So, I love that.
And maybe not always directly, right? That's where the listening comes in, right? So those, again, the formula may not work for everyone, but it worked very well for me. Still working, right? So
you described the NFL as almost, or like the NFL, your club, the club's almost as 2 different businesses, right? There's the football operation, which is what everybody sees on, when they're watching the football game. And then there's the business operation. Maybe just like tell us a story, like how does kind of that bifurcated, model, how does that impact cyber, and like, how did you kind of address that? Yeah.
So it's really interesting because every club is different, but at this club, we are one organization, and then you can kind of think about it like departments, different departments. So we have like an HR department, we have like a marketing department, we also have a football department. The football department is huge, right? Because now you're talking about the players, the coaches, right? Staff, scouting, and every other medical, athletics, nutritionists. So that's that's a huge department. So there are almost like departments within that huge department. But it's one organization, right? We're actually in the same building, same facility. So we share everything, right? And so that's how I look at it. Now, the use cases may be different, but it's one infrastructure, right? And so there are some little caveats in there, right? Not to share too much, but it's just that it just looks a little bit different in terms of like maybe every organization doesn't have a ticketing department, right? Which means that I have to look at, PII a little bit differently. Maybe every organization, unless you're like a medical organization or a hospital, doesn't have to deal with HIPAA, right? Because we're looking at player health information or, player medical records. So again, it's just understanding like what we do and then looking at every specific department, looking at what they do and what's important. And then you can kind of determine, okay, what is it that I really need to protect, or what is it that really matters in terms of like the flow. The only difference is that like our business, you see it on Sundays, right? Like the result, but there's so much. That's another thing. Back to your first question, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. Like I had no idea. Like people watch a football game and it's fun and it's great and all the lights and all the like, commotion, which is exciting, but there's so much that goes into that behind the scenes. So much so that when we talk about like the off season, which is like this period, It just means that there's no football on TV, but the organization is still going. Like we're still working. It's actually our busiest time of the year because it's, we can make changes and do things and deploy things. So yeah, but it's I don't want to say it's the same, but it kind of is the same if you're looking at it from an organizational perspective. It's just different departments, and one of them happens to be a football team, right? Like, so it's interesting, but it's almost the same. Like it's almost the same as any like corporation, right?
So it sounds like you definitely, if you build out, you said you've been there over a little bit over 3 years now as you built your roadmap out. It sounds like there is a seasonality. Obviously, we talk about the football season, but that's something very different as a football, watcher of football versus somebody that's on the internal operations of the business.
Yes.
So part of that learning process that you said is that you've had to adapt how you apply your version, your strategy of cyber around that internal seasonality in terms of when you can do things.
Yes, exactly. It's like when you have like a blackout period. Regular organization, you may have a blackout period that may be December, or because finance is closing the books, or it might be the end of Q4. I don't know. So I look at it like that. There are things that we can change during the season because we're in production, right? It's like we're producing these games on Thursdays. Well, the NFL is producing the games, but there are things that happen behind the scenes. Whereas during the off season, it's a little bit quieter in terms of the TV things, right? But there's a lot of things that are happening in the background that for IT, right? For every other department, it may be dead. For IT, and security, we can now deploy patches. If things break, it's okay because we don't have to worry about there's a game on Thursday night, right? And that stress. So we can, we have a backup plan. We can upgrade servers. We can do more. We can touch production a little bit more during the off season. But it's also a time where we could kind of reevaluate, what are we doing? Do we need to change to another vendor? Do we need to rethink our strategy about X, Y, Z? So you have a little bit more of a buffer time, but it goes really fast. And then we're back into like the swing of things. And then in between that time though, there are peaks because we have like the draft, we have, you know what I mean? So like those things happen. We have the combine before the draft. So there are those like events that it gets super, super busy, but then it like goes down again until the season starts. So yeah.
That's interesting.
And it depends how long we're in the season too. Because if we get to like playoffs or whatever, then it's, our season doesn't end at the end of January or January. It goes a little bit longer. So it really depends on a lot of things as well.
So I'm curious, like when, and you as much as you can say, but like, what is like the reach of cyber with the individual players? Like how much does it impact them? Whatever, I just think that would be interesting, whatever you can kind of speak about that.
Yeah, not so much because the players have they're end users, but they're not end users. So they get secure devices, that they use for their work, right? And so that in terms of like the devices that they're using, those are part of our environment, right? And so we provision those. On a day-to-day perspective, not much because that falls more under like our physical security. Okay. So that's not something that I do, right? Now, in terms of like coaches and everybody else in the football organization, yes, they have to do like annual security awareness training. They have to read my annoying emails. They have to, right, which, they have to do my little snippet trainings. And they tell me how much they like them or dislike them. But those are like requirements, right? So I try to make it fun. I try to make it like, like not cool, but kind of like, it's like a talking point, right? So they're more like, I did your training, or I'm going to do your training soon. Or I'm like, I see you. I know that you didn't do the training, right? So I make a little like joke out of it. And sometimes I do a little like, there's like a little competitive, I see that you're on the little like dashboard, what's going on, So just to try to make it fun. But the players, not so much. Yeah.
I love
There's
that.
also like union stuff and stuff with the players. So
Okay.
there's like a lot of things that happen in the background.
Yeah, probably things you can't do. They're probably in contracts and stuff like that.
Yeah. But like when they are here, like, you talk to them, right? Like if they had a question, there were a couple that have asked me questions and I'll answer the question, right? Like if there's a specific question. But if it's like, I think someone couldn't like log into one of their apps or something, or like
That's
Instagram,
funny to
I
think.
don't know.
You
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
think
And
that
it's
with
like,
an NFL athlete. Like they'd be like, darn it, my single sign-on's not working or
I
whatever, right?
well, you have like multiple phones and all that,
Right.
Celebrity life, I guess. So then
for
I was
those-
like, okay, we have to do those things, but it's not. Yeah.
That's
They're
so funny.
different.
So for listeners that are listening right now, yes, even professional athletes have to use single sign-on, and they have trouble with logins every once in a while
And forget their password
and forget their password.
or pins or whatever.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things you had mentioned in our pre-interview chat was that there's about 32 different clubs who compete fiercely on the field.
Yeah.
But when it comes to cyber, you guys have great collaboration.
Yes.
Like, tell me, like, why does that work? And like, what would it take for other industries to maybe copy that model? And I'll caveat that by saying, I know like everyone's listening. We know there's like various ISACs out there for pretty much everything. But a lot of those, I've been part of a lot of those are really light on action. Like there's not a lot. A lot of them are very vendor heavy too. So I'm curious, like, why does it work for you guys? Like, what have you found that's like unique maybe about the NFL model that you guys have?
I think it works because I'm going to blame the NFL, right? Or give them kudos, right? I think it works because of them, right? So there's like an information security office, there's a CISO, and I think they do a lot of outreach in terms of making sure that like we're all good, that we're supported. And I think that's why it works, right? We will complain, we will fight with them, we will push back. But it's like healthy pushback because we all have the same mission. And I think that's why they also make an effort to get us all together a few times a year so we get to see each other in person and we can relate to like the struggles, right? We all understand, the football organization, they want to watch video, they want to do it from their phones, they want to do this, they want to do that. So it's like we have this commonality and we can talk about issues that we're facing like on the spot, like, what are you guys doing about XYZ? And you can't really talk about it with anybody else. So I think because we're in the same industry, and I would assume that, I don't know, maybe if you're like in finance or like in fashion, like I know folks in CISOs in the fashion industry and they speak, even though they're from competing brands, right? And so I think it depends on the people, but I think all of us are, I guess maybe, I don't know, we're good people, we're a good bunch because we all share. I'm like, hey, what are you using? You could have just won the Super Bowl. And I'm like, hey, what are you guys using as a seg? You know what I mean? Or what are you guys using for training and awareness? And everybody's willing to share because we all understand what we do. And honestly, you can't really talk about it with anybody else. It's like we only have each other. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. And I don't know how others can replicate it. I think we kind of do a good job in the industry, like outside of sports. But it depends on there are a lot of little like mini groups. And I think that's one of the issues that I found. So, I don't know. I don't have the secret sauce formula, but I will say that it's a godsend because when I first joined, I had no idea, right? So having these people to reach out to, that kind of gave me a little insight into like, this is how it works and this is how we do it. It's super helpful. So
maybe some of it that makes it more effective is, yes, you guys kind of all have a very similar, real part of the NFL. But I think the other part of it could be just that it's smaller, most likely. There's only 32 clubs. And so there's not so much diffusion of what people are after. So that might be something also for other ISACs that are incredibly broad that may lose. That could be part of it as well. I don't know.
It could be. I mean, I attend a lot of other events and not within the sports industry, but just regular. And I meet people from all different verticals, different industries. And what I've discovered is that we all have the same issue. I'm like, oh, you're dealing with that too? Like, so it's not specific to the industry. I mean, sometimes there are some things that are specific, but I feel like at the base of it all, at the core of it all, we are all struggling with the same issues, right? Whether it's budget, vendors, whether it's consolidation of tools, whether it's like tool sprawl, so I think if you find those commonalities, I think it makes it easier. The problem is when we all think we're special and too important to talk to each other. I think that becomes like a blocker. I don't know. That's my take on it. But yeah. But we were when I joined, we were kind of siloed, and it was another person that had joined a month before I did at another club, and we met just because introductions and stuff like that, and we were like, hey, let's set up like a channel, and let's invite the other like security officers, right, or security analysts, whoever. If you're doing security and you work at a club, we're going to invite you, right? So every time we would go to like these on-site or in-person, we would talk about it. I still talk about it. And I say, hey, if you're not in the group, let me know and I'll add you to the group, right? And so it's like common knowledge now. And that's where we're like, we are active. So if something is happening, if we need to share IOCs, it's instant, right? So that's how it becomes a plus. But then also for, hey, I have a question. How are you doing this? Or how are you complying with this? So it's just grown into that. But I think initially we all knew about each other, but we were kind of like siloed, right? Okay. Different states and all that. So I would say that sometimes it takes one or two people to kind of like bring it together, right? But I'm not going to say that it's always easy. And again, it really depends on your industry and your area. But even if your group is small, as long as you impact one or two people, right? Like you can be helping one or two people when that matters. That's important. So, and then it'll grow. So start where you are, start small, just do it, execute.
I love that. Well, you've done a lot of work in cyber over the years, but you've also done some serious work around representation and community through Women of Color in Tech.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, what did, like, kind of going through that, what did that teach you about building credibility in rooms where people maybe not expect you to be the expert?
Yeah. So one thing it showed me was that I needed to be super confident, because at that time it was my first time like pitching, and I've never been like a salesperson, but I learned quickly that we're all salespeople, right? You have to sell your idea, you have to sell whatever, and convince and storytell. So that's the one thing it showed me that I still use today, right? That a pitch doesn't mean that I'm trying to get you to buy my car, right? I may be trying to convince you to like give me budget or to back me on an idea, or something like that, right? So that's one thing. So it gave me that confidence. But also I think, that was an interesting time. It was like the heyday of Twitter, and there was a lot of work around like, representation. And I just thought it was important, right, to show people that like, hey, there are people that look like me, that have had very long, successful, IT careers, and that are technical, and that do not have imposter syndrome, that can, that have careers in security as well, that there are more of us. And that's why I thought it was like super important for me to do that. The idea came from, I don't even know how it just, what happened, the Women of Color in Tech, I needed to build a site, and I was looking for photos of women like that look like me. Okay. And I was like, I don't want to take pictures. Like I just had a baby or whatever. Like I don't want to, whatever, be on camera. And I was Googling, and when I searched like information security, IT, whatever, I just found like men, right? And specifically like white men, right? And I was like, okay, great, but I'm not that person. I want someone who looks like me. Right. And so that kind of spawned that idea of like these stock photos. But that was really it. And that grew into something bigger, but it was just, hey, I need to showcase that like there are people that look like me, so that other people coming behind us, the younger generation, understand that this is a viable career path as well. Because I didn't see it growing up. I just stumbled into it, right? So that's what that's shown me. And just also that you have to like continuously, I don't know, like be curious, right? Like I've just always been super curious, and you can call it nosy. I'm a little nosy too, right? when I'm, in terms of like discovering new
Sure.
things and trying to solve problems. And so that is, I think, what has led me down all these like rabbit holes. The books were COVID, and that was just being visible and someone from like O'Reilly reaching out and saying, "Hey, would you do this?" And I'm like, I have never written a book before. Okay, I'll do it. Right? I'm stuck at home anyway, right? And and that's so, sometimes saying yes and kind of pushing through fear, right? Like, that whole imposter mumbo jumbo, which doesn't exist. Yeah, so that's how. So it's not a traditional path. Again, I don't have a playbook. It's just been kind of following my instinct, but also being a little bit defiant in terms of like, I don't have to do what everybody's doing. If everybody's, I don't know, blogging, I don't have to do that, right? I need to do what feels good to me, what I'm comfortable and what I feel like I'm bringing the most value, right? And so, I was always told when I was young, you don't have to dance at every party. So I don't go to every party. You know what I mean? So
I love that.
I go to the parties that I feel like I want to go to. And I think that can be a gift or a curse. For me, it's been more of a gift, right? Because I'm not trying to follow, I'm trying to lead and charter my own path. So I think that also has helped me a lot. But I'm also from New York City. So I have that little I have a little attitude when it comes to that race.
Well,
like, I'm not following you.
My family's from the New York's and Bronx and all that, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Well, you've done certainly a lot in cyber. You've done a lot for women of color in cyber. I love that. How do you stay current? Because there's so much changing, especially with the world with AI now, right? Where there's a new model every week.
Yes.
What's your routine look like? How do you stay current? How do you stay sharp?
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you, routine is doing a lot of heavy lifting because I am also a mom and I have they're not that young anymore, but younger children, younger than me, obviously. And it's difficult for me to have a set routine where I'm like, okay, every day I'm going to read 5 chapters of this like AI security book, right? That doesn't always happen. So I have to change it up a bit. Before I got the job at the Giants, I was doing my master's, and that was more async. So that was like an online program. And so that I would dedicate like my Sundays, right? I would take evenings when the kids are in bed, and my Sundays, that was like my homework time, my re-up time, my figure things out. It was a very difficult, technically challenging program. So there was a lot of screaming, right? And on Sundays. And so that's what I did back then. I finished that program. And now what I do is I try to find time within my day or evenings, right? And weekends to explore different topics. So that could be reading books, that could be listening to podcasts, listening to interviews, that could be attending events, attending conferences specific to, it doesn't have to be sports related. It's, security industry related, CISO summits, stuff like that, to understand what's out there, what are people talking about. But also going back to the executing, I am a proponent of investing in yourself. So even if my organization does not provide a book budget or budget for tools, I create my own budget. So I set money aside and I pay for my own Claude licenses, my own, ChatGPT licenses, my own, I invest, but I also take the time out to log in, build skills, build this, think about this. I'm very hands-on and visual. So I can't just talk about it or read about it or listen to people talk about it. I have to actually do it to feel comfortable. And then I use those skills within my organization, right? Like to solve problems, right? To talk about AI, to look at AI security, to understand, what's the difference between an LLM and an agent, right? You need to dive in and get your hands dirty in order to really grok it, understand it, right? And so that's what I've always done. Honestly, I've done that since before Microsoft, but I think at Microsoft it became real because my first month they were just like, okay, well, just here's your access. You need to build this cloud environment. You need to build a hybrid environment. And I was like, wait, what? And they were like, yeah, just go. I'm like, so I got to build an AD environment and then sync it to the, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So I had to get my hands dirty, right? And that was the best way for me to understand it. And it still holds true today. If I don't like put hands on keyboard, I won't really understand it. So I have to like dive in. So yeah, so that's how I stay sharp. So it's not, I don't have like, I wake up every day at 4 a.m. and I go for a jog. Like, I don't do that. I listen to my body. I do wake up at 5 a.m, but that's a different story. I do wake up super early. But I don't have like, I feel like I am the type of person that I have to like listen to myself. I have to listen to my body. So some days it's literally Netflix and chill. And I think that makes me more sharp because I'm taking time to kind of like say, okay, I'm going to watch this Netflix thing and then I'm going to go do some yard work and then I'm going to go for a walk and go take my kids for ice cream. So understanding when to like stop, because there's only so much that you can like fit in your brain, rest, reset, and then get back to it, right? But yeah, I don't have a regimen.
I think you actually do. You don't realize it. As you've been talking about this for the last couple of minutes,
so?
I think you do have a regimen, and it's I think it's a pretty good one. The one thing I heard a couple of things, but the one that I really loved is the fact that you've built your own personal like learning budget, like taking your own dollars, not just expecting your employer to do it. And I love that because I also discovered that like years ago too. Like, yes, take what your company will give you. But I know personally for me, the value that I put on my own dollars that are going into investment, I will definitely not let those be wasted, right?
Yeah.
So investing in those things, that was really key. I heard that. And then the second thing was you realize that, you can't be doing that every day. You've got to take time for yourself for true rest and relaxation.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%.
So you do have a model.
I guess I do have a model. I guess I'm not very regimented, but I feel like it's a little bit diverse. I do a little bit of those things so that I can stay fresh. I feel like that helps me stay fresh. It may not work for everybody. And of course, understanding that not everybody has access to like take money out of their budget and spend it on that, right? Like times are hard. Gas is $5. Well, almost $4 now. So that's understandable. But I would say like, even if you can spend $5 on a book, that goes a long way, right? It just means investing in yourself. So that's, when I can, and I do that. And I just make that a priority, like for me. That. Yeah.
I love it. Well, Christina, this has been a amazingly far-ranging chat. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. To find out more, please visit us at cloudsecuritytoday.com.